I will be breaking down and scoring the entire fight between Gaara and Rock Lee. We all know how the fight ended, but before the stoppage, who was actually winning the fight? The fight lasted from episode 48 to 50. I created a scoring system for anime fights, similar to boxing and MMA, how they have their own scoring systems. These fights will be scored in 3 categories. First, we have strikes, which are regular strikes. Any type of attack that doesn't cause too much damage, but it hits the opponent. That counts as 1 point. Then we have damaging strikes, which is like a significant strike, which is any type of attack that causes the opponent to either grunt, get pushed back a significant amount, or it causes them to bleed. That counts as 2 points. And the third and last one, that's a knockdown. Any type of strike that causes the opponent to get knocked down, that is 5 points. So in like MMA and boxing, whenever an opponent is knocked down, that's pretty much over for the round. They pretty much lost that round. It's almost hard to recover from a knockdown. So that's why it will be 5 points. I will work on perfecting this scoring system for anime fights, but for right now, this is what I came up with. This is what I'm gonna go with. But yeah, let's get straight into the video to break down the fight. Lee attacks first with a leaf hurricane, but it gets blocked. Lee evades Gaara's sand attack. Lee then throws a combination of strikes, but all gets blocked. Gaara goes into a state of psychosis and says, "We haven't had enough blood," and then grabs a hold of Lee's leg with his sand and launches him to the wall, which causes him to knock down. The first attack landed was a knockdown. That's 5 points for Gaara. Lee gets up and attacks Gaara with a combination of taijutsu attacks, but it all gets blocked. Lee later slips on Gaara's sand, so I won't count that as any type of strike or knockdown. Lee finds himself on top of a sculpture and is then told by Guy Sensei to remove his weights. This should count as some points towards Lee for the fear that he penetrated in Gaara's psyche, but I won't. Lee's strikes are now faster, but none land at first until Lee does like 10 front flips and lands a down kick on Gaara's face, which cuts his cheek. That's 2 points for Lee. Lee later blindsides Gaara with his speed and then hits him with a straight right to the face and knocks him down. That's 5 points for Lee. Gaara gets up and is now in a state of insanity. He is unstable. Lee runs laps around Gaara and then upkicks him. It elevates his body, so that's 2 points for Lee. Lee then follows with 12 body kicks in mid-air, so that's 12 points since each were regular strikes. Lee then wraps him up with his bandages and then uses primary lotus to slam him down. Turns out that right before the lotus, Lee closed his eyes and Gaara used a body replacement technique. Gaara then strikes Lee with his sand and knocks him down. That's 5 points. Lee is then blasted to the wall and dropped on his ass, causing another 5 points. Lee is then engulfed in a wave of sand. The sand clears out and Lee is on his knees, so that's another 5 points. Lee goes back to dodging some attacks, but then gets blasted with another wave of sand that lays him down on the ground. Again, 5 points. Another strike sends Lee flying to the air and down to the ground, tumbling. 5 points. Lee gets up and again, the same attack, the same result. 5 points. Gaara follows up with a strike to Lee's back. It causes him to yell, so that's 2 points for a damaging strike. Lee gets up and opens 4 of the inner chakra gates and then upkicks Gaara and sends him in the air. 2 points. Mid-air, Lee backfists Gaara's chest. 1 point. And then he punches his back, so that's another point. Lee then hits him mid-air with a 15 strike combination, which I totaled up from the noises the strikes made. 15 points for Lee. 5 seconds later, a 10 strike combination for Lee, another 10 points. Lee then kicks Gaara's back before he falls to the ground, so that's another point. Lee then activates the 5th gate and fakes a head strike, but goes for a strong jab at Gaara's stomach that causes him to grunt. 2 points. Lee then strikes Gaara down with a reverse lotus attack. And now despite Gaara cushioning his fall with his sand, that is still a knockdown, so 5 points for Lee. Gaara then grabs a hold of Lee with his sand and sand coffin attacks him, which causes Lee to yell and then drops him. That's another 5 points. Gaara goes for another attack, but Guy Sensei stops the fight. Gaara wins the match via a coach's stoppage, despite Lee already being knocked out. But if you tally the points up before the stoppage, Rock Lee had 58 points while Gaara had 42. Lee was clearly the more active fighter. While the few attacks Gaara landed, all of them were knockdowns except for one. Gaara was losing the fight, mostly due to Lee's high pace and his activity, but he managed to pull the finish. Right after the reverse lotus attack, he was able to cushion.